is going to stay the same as exponential, and the period we're going to change to 20. Now, for those of you who are more visual, let me just pull up a chart of the Euro USD here. And this looks rather intimidating. And to be honest, I'm not sure if they still do it, but MetaTrader used to start new accounts this way. So if you were a brand new trader, opened a brokerage account, downloaded the platform, this is what you would see. And to be honest, for the way that I trade, this looks pretty confusing, right? We've got a MACD down here, stochastics, RSI. So the first thing you want to do, or the first thing we're going to do, is get rid of each of these. Okay, so we're going to delete stochastics and we're going to get rid of the RSI. All right, get rid of both of those levels. All right, there we go. So you can see already that we have a lot more real estate to work with, and that's what we want. We want as much room as possible to be able to see the price action on this chart. All right, so now to run through those settings I just showed you, if you right click on this, go to properties, and under the colors tab, go ahead and select black on white. And under the common tab, we're going to turn off the chart on foreground. And I'm also going to turn off these two down here. So the only thing I should have left is the chart shift, candlesticks, and show open, high, low, and close. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And there we have it, a nice clean chart with black on white. To get the two moving averages that I mentioned, the 10 and 20 EMAs, I'm going to go up here to View and Navigator. And from here, I'm going to drag the custom moving average onto the window. And under the Inputs tab, I'm going to select 10 and exponential. All right, I'm going to do the same thing for the 20. So I'm going to select 20 and change this to exponential. Oh, I wanted to change that to blue actually. Okay, so, and again, I'm going to provide you guys with some notes afterwards. So if I'm running through this pretty quick, don't worry. Be sure to take your own notes, but I'll also provide you with these slides after the presentation. So I'm going to close out of this window. And there we have it. We've got a nice black on white chart, lots of real estate to work with. And I've also got my 10 and 20 moving averages. All right, now let me just explain where these moving averages come into play. And if you'll remember, I mentioned mean reversion a few slides ago. So with the Euro USD, what we're looking at here is the mean, the average for this market right now, for this trending market, is right here, right? So it's right in between the 10 and 20 moving averages. So right now with price up here, I don't want to buy, right? I'm not going to buy up here because there's a good chance that the market is going to come back down here into this range, right? So in a trending market, that's where you would want to buy, somewhere in that area. And of course, we would use key levels to find that, which I'll get to in the next lesson. But if you notice down here, right, this is where you'd want to buy. Back here as well. Okay, so we want to avoid obviously buying too high and selling too low, and that's how the 10 and 20 EMAs help us. So now that we've talked about getting our chart set up, and your chart should be nice and clean now, let's go through and talk about mastering support and resistance. And let me just say right off the bat that this is one of those topics that I really can't stress enough, because I've said it before that if you get this right, trading becomes almost effortless. And if you get it wrong, you're going to struggle a lot more than you have to. Think about it this way. When you were a kid, if you had a coloring book, right, your job was to color in between the lines. Well, support and resistance are no different. Once you have these levels on your chart, your job as a trader is to trade between the levels. So go ahead and write that down now in your worksheet or your notepad, that your job as a trader is to trade between support and resistance. Let's run through a few key points here, and then I'll get into an example. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is that you should use, when you're trading price action, it's best to use the daily and weekly time frames to find key levels. All right, most of my, I would say probably 90% of the levels I draw come from the daily and weekly timeframes. Now, between the daily and weekly, I would say that probably 70 to 80% of the levels I find come off of the daily, right? And the other 20 to 30% come from the weekly. So next up is to focus on the swing highs and lows. So the first thing you want to do when looking for key levels is focus on those highs and lows that really stick out. And again, we'll take a look at an example in just a moment. Next up is to include as many touches as possible without cutting off the upper and lower wicks. So what